Hello, I'm Lisa Salazar with the City of Los Angeles Youth Development Department, and welcome to another episode of Protest and Promise. Today's episode is about voting. We know that elevating and amplifying youth voices can be done through the voting process. On today's episode, we are going to talk about what the voting process is about, how to register to vote, and also learn where they can access both educational and civic resources to help them make informed decisions about measures and candidates that are on the current ballot. Today I'm joined by my good friend and in-studio guest, Petty Santos. She is the executive officer at the Office of the City Clerk. And my other guests are our very own youth from the Olivia E. Mitchell Youth Council. So today I am joined by Abby, and as I call your names, maybe just give a little wave. Abby, Charlie, Lauren, Lalithia, and Genevieve. Thank you all for joining us for this very important conversation. So why don't we start with maybe just understanding a little bit about what the City Clerk's office does, but more specifically, if you could help us and help our youth council members understand the role of the city's Division of Elections.
Sure, thank you, Lisa. So the Office of the City Clerk, the oldest department in the city of Los Angeles, actually functions to be the legislative assistance for the city council. We manage the council meetings, and then we also are the retention of records for all of the council meetings. In addition to maintaining the records of city council and all of the 15 plus committees that the council has, we also maintain the records of everything related to city government in our records and archives division. And we also maintain all the city archives. So there's some very exciting things about the Olympics or different events that have happened over the years that you can come check out in the archives. And actually, I welcome everyone to come and get a tour of the archives. Now that the safety part of the pandemic is over, we're actually starting to offer tours again of our archives, and it is amazing. Another thing that the city clerk does is we're responsible for the programming for neighborhood councils as far as their funding, and we manage the business improvement district program also related to their funding and their establishment and their renewal process. But what we're here to talk about today is elections, and we do have an elections division. We no longer manage municipal elections entirely. That's handled by the county, as you know, and I'm going to talk a lot through this next half hour about all the things that the county does to make that easier on youth and all voters in Los Angeles. But our elections division, what we do is we go out and meet with people all the time, every day. Our outreach team is working with different groups that we know have a history of a low propensity voting average. And so we work with those groups to try to increase their knowledge of how do you register to vote? How do you actually vote? And you may be surprised of the groups that we're actually able to touch. We touch persons who are recently released from incarceration. We go to churches and we talk to faith-based organizations. We're at almost every community event that you see in Los Angeles. You'll see a little table, it'll say the Office of the City Clerk elections, and that's where you can get information, and we'll talk more about that.
Great. So it's really about making sure that everyone who could possibly vote is informed about that they have that right to vote, and you're providing a mechanism or the information they need to register to vote so that they can participate.
Exactly.
There's so much, every voting cycle, there's just so much on the ballot. I have my official sample ballot, and there's all kinds of stuff in here about different candidates, different propositions. How do we learn more about who these people are, and what should I expect to see in this?
What you can expect to see in that, and everything is in there, and trust me, I'm with you, and it's a lot, and it's a lot of legalese, and it's a lot of very tiny print. But what is in there are things that people like yourselves, like your parents, like everyone registered in the city of LA and the county of LA, they've gotten together and talked about which candidates they want to be on the ballot and which measures they want to be on the ballot. So things that affect you and your parents' taxes, that affect your school buildings where you are, that affect the gas tax, that affect renters' rights, homeowners' rights. There's all types of things that end up on a ballot. And to get there, they actually, it looks like, you know, once it's printed, okay, here's a big book with a lot of little a lot of little type. But actually, to get to that stage, people have had to go and collect signatures to put the ballot measures on the ballot and to even put their names on the ballot. You don't just get to say, I'm running for president and I'm going to put my name on the ballot. You have to go through the initiative process and get those signatures. And sometimes, even in the city of LA, the signature process to get a measure on the ballot, sometimes you need 80,000 signatures, 60,000 signatures. It just depends. It's a lot. And one of the things I did want to mention that's in there that a lot of people might just thumb through and not see is when there's a measure on the ballot, there's a proponent statement and an opponent statement. So there's a lot of other ways we can talk about of how to get information about the measure itself, but at minimum, you have two distinct polar opposite positions about the support or not support of that measure. So it's worth it to read through there and get a little bit more information on the measures that way.
Yeah, thank you for that. I've always been impressed in just talking with Petty in the past about the work that the clerk's office does to verify signatures. So whenever someone is running for an elected office in the city of Los Angeles, I believe you're responsible, or your office is responsible for verifying those signatures.
Right.
So they just can't go out and collect signatures from not real people. It's a pretty intensive process.
Right. There's a lot of signatures, like I said. It's in the tens of thousands that you need, in some cases even higher, depending on the measure and what it's going to take to pass the measure once it gets on the ballot. But yes, that process, it has to be registered voters that sign those ballots, and you'll see them mostly in your supermarkets, at the malls, at places where you maybe don't want to get bothered. But it is one way for someone to start the civic process of being engaged in voting, because when you sign an initiative petition, you're actually saying, okay, let's put this on the ballot.
All right. So I know you all have prepared some questions for Petty to learn more about voter registration, about the voting process. Who'd like to offer a question first?
I'd like to go.
All right, Charlie.
Hi, Charlie Saya from CD13. Thank you for joining us and thank you for having me. So I believe youth can play a key role as advocates for voter engagement. And what educational resources could you provide to communities with low voter turnouts? And could we possibly offer an educational course on voting and the power of voting in schools?
We do.
Great question.
Yes, that is a great question. Just this season alone, we've touched 120 different schools. Have any of you, by show of hands, have you had a mock election or a presentation from our elections group? Good.
Right.
I was hoping we'd have at least one, 20%. So yes, we do. We go out to schools, and we can go, if you want us to come, you can ask for the elections division to come out. And then we also are going out anyway, trying to hit as many schools as possible. Not just your high schools. We even sometimes touch middle schools, and we definitely go to community colleges as well in the community college district. So when we go there, we pass out voter guides. We pass out voter registration information. We can register 16 and 17-year-olds to vote. Of course, you can't vote yet until you're 18. But how cool is that we come to your school, you can register to vote, and when you're 18, you're going to receive information from LA County that says, you're registered, let's get you started voting.
So you just do it that one time. So if I'm 16, I can like pre-register to vote. And then you all know that I'm 18 now, and then I'll start to receive information. I'm already registered. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's been an awesome way to get people involved. And then we hold mock elections at your schools to kind of show you how that process looks. When we can take the ballot marking devices to your school to really show you how that works, what exactly it is to walk into a vote center and vote. We can really give you that experience.
So a hands-on, like go in the little booth and like fill in the bubble or punch it or do whatever you got to do.
Right. It's all electronic, but yes.
Oh, it's all electronic.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
All right, that's amazing. Very good. Who has the next question?
Could I ask one?
Yeah, Abby.
Just piggyback off our conversation about pre-registering. As someone who hasn't reached the legal age of 18 yet for the upcoming election, how do you suggest that youth under 18 take the first steps to become more engaged and informed beyond just pre-registering? So that like once we do turn 18, we know what steps to take and like we're not just uninformed about what's happening in local government.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I'll jump in, and then if you have anything to add, Petty, for young people like you, Abby, that aren't old enough to vote yet, I would say be educated on what's on the ballot, have conversations with folks maybe in your house, in your neighborhood that are of voting age, encourage them to vote. Ask them if they're registered, and if they're not registered, encourage them to register, and then share the information that Petty has for us about how you go about registering. So I think that's like a really active way that young people who aren't old enough to vote yet can actually participate. I've even had little circles with my friends where I've said, there's all these ballots on the measure and it's just too much to read. I don't have time. But what if we each just took one and did a little bit of research, and there's so much information available, and then came back together and then just kind of reported out, well, here's what I read. These are the folks that are in favor of this for this reason. These are the ones that are not. And this is what I think. And then you have like a little discussion about it. These are all things that you can do, while you're waiting to turn a voting age of 18. I don't know, Petty, if you have anything to add.
The only thing I want to add is you guys have taken a great leap by already being part of this youth council. Yeah. The neighborhood councils, we have 99 neighborhood councils citywide, so there should be one in your neighborhood. And the neighborhood councils, 30% of them have a youth board member. One of the reasons they don't is because it's so challenging to actually get youth involved in the neighborhood council. When you're involved in the neighborhood council, you're not only affecting what's interesting to your neighborhood or what you're trying to change or make better in your neighborhood, because all of that information, you work with other neighborhoods, you kind of get regional. You write what's called community impact statements, where you actually get to chime in on different things that happen in city council. And that information is taken very seriously from city council when you're involved in the neighborhood councils. Neighborhood councils will let you vote on a neighborhood council representative youth member at the age of 14. Oh. So there's really an opportunity to get engaged in your local community. Another thing that neighborhood councils do almost every election cycle is they hold a candidate forum. That's a great way to see the candidates that are running. Candidates that are running now often run again in the next couple years. So even if you're not old enough to vote, going to a candidate forum, seeing that process, but also meeting some of the people that are trying to be your legislators, that's another way to kind of get a hint of what it's like to be involved in the political process and the voting process.
Yeah, great question. Thank you for that, Abby. Who'd like to go next?
I'd like to go next.
All right, Lauren.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lauren. I represent CDA, and I'd like to ask, what are some ways that voting can be made more accessible to those who have disabilities or for those who are in a convalescent/nursing home?
I'm so excited you asked that because it still seems kind of new, the county's ballot marking devices. But if you go to a vote center, you're going to see that they are extremely accessible. They're accessible to almost every type of challenge you can imagine. If you're visually challenged, if you're hearing impaired, if you're mobility challenged, you can actually set up this voting module for you so that you can access it. In addition, if for some reason you're mobility challenged and can't even get out of your car, at every vote center located throughout the county, they have what they call curbside voting. And you can actually just drive up, you let them know you're interested in voting, and someone will come to you and you can cast your ballot from your car.
Wow. So
they've really made great strides in this new ballot marking device that's been around now for a couple years. But this newer way that we have this has had accessibility in mind from the get-go.
Great question. And you're saying it's been around for a couple years. I didn't know about it. So thank you for asking that, because anybody that watches this will now know that we have that system in place. That's great.
Thank you.
All right. Genevieve or Lalithia, who'd like to go next?
So, hello everyone. My name is Lalita, and I'm from CD3. And my question is, how can we look at potential biases when voting, such as peer pressure from family and friends, to align with maybe a political party or a certain, just generally being biased when voting? How do we campaign awareness against that?
One of the things that we talk about voting being a right and a privilege and all those things. But what's really important about the voting process is it is very personal and it's private. When you go to a vote center, you're going to be able to just vote on your own. I don't know how you would avoid peer pressure from your parents trying to influence you on what you do, but definitely when you get to a vote center or even when you fill out the ballot at home, because all voters in Los Angeles County receive a ballot by mail. So the registered voters. So when you receive your ballot, it's private, it's only to you.
Yeah, hopefully you're able to access information that'll better inform you on the decision that needs to be made. Sometimes people just rely on commercials and they just vote by how many times they've seen a commercial that is promoting something to vote yes or vote no. It's important that we educate ourselves and we're able to make an informed decision. And like Petty said, it is a very personal right. So ultimately, when you fill out your ballot or you go into a polling booth, how you vote is really up to you. Great question. Thank you. Genevieve.
Hi, my name is Genevieve. I'm from City District 5, and my question is, historically, are there any major events that have resulted in higher rates of youth turnout to the polls? And what does this show us about potential ways to engage youth when it comes to voting?
What's been successful?
I think social media has been extremely successful of showing youth what the issues are before them. Obviously in a quicker way than ever possible before, you have immediate access to what's happening in the world around you. I think it's important that we continue to educate all voters, youth voters, that how important these issues are to you, because it's so easy to look at that big thick book and say, I don't even relate to that. There's nothing in there for me. And so it's just really important that we continue to engage and have conversations like this so that we don't lose sight of the importance of how everything that you vote for actually does affect you, and the people that you're voting for are actually going to be legislating laws that affect you.
That your question makes me very curious, to know from you all. Do you all talk about voting? Do you ever talk about candidates? Like, do these conversations happen in your neighborhoods, in your schools, in your communities? I'm super curious about that.
Really funny that you say that. I'm actually in an AP government class, and right now we're holding mock elections.
Okay.
So all of the students are actually creating their own campaigns for real life candidates. And we are holding our own elections in class. And when the November elections come in, we'll be holding our own elections there and voting as a class.
That's great. That's great. Anyone else want to chime in on that? Lauren, and then Charlie.
Well, at my school, voting and the elections and politics in general is often a very popular conversation.
Oh, wow.
And in my political science 10 class, which is about political theory, we discuss democracy and voting and philosophy and how it all relates to the modern world.
Wow, that's great. Wow, I'm like super excited to hear that. That's awesome.
I know, good.
Charlie.
Unfortunately, at my school, we have a lot of newcomer youth, and we're a minority majority school, so we have a lot of people of color. So voting isn't talked about a lot, especially because not a lot of people have the right to vote. And on top of that, a lot of people at my school do not believe that they have much of a power when voting. So that's why I'd love if you could come and possibly talk at our school, Los Angeles Senior High School. And on top of that, we only have one teacher or about two teachers who promote voting. We have this one teacher called Mr. Moy. He's a government class, sociology class, and he holds his mock elections. And you can choose a real person or a fake person, like R2-D2 from Star Wars, and you can run a campaign for them in the class. And he has mock elections around November and December.
Can we get there quick?
That's fun. That's awesome. Lalita, you're going to add something here.
Yeah, of course. So at our school, actually, we do have quite a few conversations about voting things like that. Recently in my AP macroeconomics class, we did have mock elections as well. And the ballot was basically identical to the real ballot, and we're assigned to kind of research and figure out which people we would support in our class. And we did end up seeing like who voted who and kind of explain through our answers. And it was very informative for me because I learned who the candidates were on this year's ballot. And also at my house, my parents often ask me for some political advice whenever the ballots come around. So I was talking with them as well about that.
That's great. So you really need to be informed on what's on the ballot. That's great. All right. Well, I think we have time for another round of questions. Charlie.
Hi. So as a youth from a mixed-status immigrant family, how can pre-registration affect voter engagement in Latino communities or in historically disenfranchised communities? And on top of that, what efforts can be made to increase voter engagement in disenfranchised communities of color?
I think some of the things that we are continuously trying to do is get the word out about how the voting process works, to try to eliminate the fear of it, to try to eliminate what seems complicated. The voter pamphlet is printed in 13 different languages, for instance.
Wow.
And one of our outreach efforts includes new Americans. So we actually go to naturalization ceremonies.
Oh, that's awesome.
And then get people as they've, with their flags, saying that they've just become American citizens. And we're like, and guess what? Now you get to vote. You have the right to vote. It's really awesome. And I think pre-registration was specifically your question. And I think pre-registration just helps put it in your mind before you're even there yet, that you have this right and that you can get engaged. And so when you're 18, hopefully by being pre-registered, more of the communities that you spoke of will know, okay, I don't have anything to fear. I don't have anything to worry about it being too complicated. It's for me. This entire system has been set up for me and my right to vote. And so that's what we're hoping to accomplish. And I think with youth like yourselves, we'll get there.
Well, I have a question for you. Do you have any doubts about voting? Like, are you kind of asking yourself or debating whether or not you should vote?
I think one of the biggest doubts that I have is that I won't be able to make the right decision. And that's like taking into account like my own personal principles and morals, my parents, my sister, and my community around me. So kind of taking in all the information and trying to condense that into one finite solution and one candidate or proposition. That's my biggest worry, is making that final decision.
Yeah, I get that. It's a big responsibility. The good thing though is that, sometimes we pass laws and we learn of unintended consequences, and there's an opportunity to go back and make corrections to those laws with amendments. So that's a really great point. Charlie?
I wouldn't say I doubt myself that much, but if I ever do doubt myself, is what Abigail said. But on top of that, just not me doubting myself, but my friends around me and the people around me in my community, just to see like they don't believe that if they vote, they're going to change anything. And so that's why a lot of them don't vote. And it's just really saddening to see that. And I just wanted to add that on.
Very good. Very good. Lauren, did you want to tag on to that last one? Go ahead.
I just want to ask, how do you influence someone that is not interested in voting into voting?
There's so much you can do, but we do try to just make sure that everyone has the information that they need to know that their vote counts. Mm-hmm. One of the things I think that I influence my own family and people that I know that are like, oh, it doesn't matter, my vote doesn't really count. Tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people vote. My vote doesn't count. Let me just give you an example. In the city of Los Angeles, the folks running for office, for council member in the city of Los Angeles, need 50% plus one vote to be elected in the primary election and not need to go to a runoff in the general election. So you can tell anyone who's still a little doubtful, you might be that one vote.
It's important. All right, Lalitha, you had a question.
Yeah, so my question was going to be about the individual candidates and propositions. Is there any trustworthy or government or city-run website that we can follow to find information about these specific things?
So some of the resources that we give potential voters and registered voters when they want more information about what's on the sample ballot is Rock the Vote, which speaks directly to your demographic of 18 to 24-year-olds. The League of Women Voters has a website with information about the ballot, and so does Vote 411, which is you can look these up, and they will give you more information from a very open and bipartisan perspective of the items that are in the sample ballot.
Those are great resources, and thank you for asking that question. So final thoughts for the young people that are out there watching the show today, what would you say would be a good thing for them to do next? We'll start with Abby. Or Abby, then Charlie.
Probably get informed, use the resources that have been identified throughout this episode, and don't be scared. Whatever informed decision that you make is probably the best for yourself, so be confident in your decision.
Excellent. Charlie?
I would say what Abby said, don't be scared. Remember that your vote is powerful, and just like she said, 50 plus 1. So you could be that one vote to change everything in the entire course of how a council district forms, or like me, myself, I sit on neighborhood council, so I vote on motions every third Tuesday of the month. So I'm changing something in my neighborhood. So voting is powerful. So you should always remember that.
Excellent. Lauren, Lalita, go ahead.
I would say also, if you're of age, to definitely pre-register to vote. It's a great thing to do, and also in case you forget on your 18th birthday, you know that you've done it beforehand and you're ready to go.
Right on, right on. Genevieve or Lauren, you want to add anything to that? Lauren?
Yes, I'd like to add something. I would say that once you become eligible to vote, to not neglect this right, even if it's just a primary election or a midterm or a presidential election, always practice your right to vote and speak your voice, because it's your right and it matters, and it's so important for everyone to vote.
Absolutely. Genevieve, last thought?
Yeah, so make sure to normalize conversations about voting within your friend groups or with your family, and ensure that you all can gain access to maybe when the election dates are, what the difference between a primary or current election is, and ensure that you can access resources such as Rock the Vote, and just normalize it so the expectation is that when you're eligible to vote, you go out and do it.
Fantastic, fantastic. Well, the right to vote is one of our most important pillars of our democracy. It gives ordinary citizens the right to have their voice heard by their government, as well as the opportunity to decide who represents them. Recently, this fundamental right has been attacked and challenged by those seeking to disempower and disenfranchise parts of the population, creating a rift in our democracy. Young people are key to what the future holds and will decide through their vote what the world looks like for the next generation. That's why it's more important than ever to highlight the need for young people to get involved. I urge young people to make voting a lifelong habit. It's crucial to our future. I'd like to thank Petty from the Office of the Clerk's Office. I'd like to thank the members of our LA City Youth Council. I'm Lisa Salazar, and thank you for joining us on another episode of Protest and Promise.